You are in the beginning stages of raising not only funds but awareness around a new project.
Yes. We've got a new film coming up called Atomic Fondue. It is
Right.
a Cold War thriller slash comedy about a plane load of Air Force wives in 1973 who have to thwart World War III while balancing infidelity, spies, martinis, and fondue. And that's the next movie called Atomic Fondue.
And do you have any kind of well, currently there's a Kickstarter going on, as we
Yeah.
said. Well, we said there was fine, you're raising money, but there is a specific, and we'll put, well, people can search Kickstarter under Atomic Fondue. That's what you do.
Yeah, that's what you do.
And
That's the easiest way to find it. Just go to Kickstarter and search
yeah,
Atomic Fondue.
right,
And yeah, but we've only got a week left as of when we're recording this. So,
right.
you know,
So if you're
hurry
watching,
up,
listening,
folks.
get on it, folks.
Yeah, yeah. Because we want to make sure that we can kickstart this film.
Right,
But
right.
and we're only trying to raise, like 10% of the budget or something like, or less than that even,
Hmm.
through Kickstarter. But I've always, I mean, this is my seventh film, and pretty much all of them we've done some version of crowdfunding. And what I've always found is you start with the crowdfunding campaign. It's Kickstarter, not Kick Finisher. You shouldn't expect to raise your whole budget.
Yeah,
If you're doing a feature, if you're doing a short, maybe you can.
that's true.
But then that also leads to a lot of other people saying, "Ooh, that sounds cool. Now I want to invest, or now I want to donate through your fiscal sponsor, or different other options, or getting involved as crew, or cast even." So
Mhm.
it's so like you said, it's a good way to announce that you're making a thing, whatever that
Right.
thing is.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know if I ever really thought about the fact that, like, if let's say I, had some interest in supporting a film and I had some money in the bank or whatever, and then I saw somebody kind of had a really good Kickstarter that was pretty successful and engaged a lot of people. That could be a good um, signal that that this might be the right project.
Yeah, yeah. I was just up over in Sundance last week and was moderating a couple panels at this thing called the Impact Lounge, and the Taylor Shaw, who's the head of Kickstarter's film division. She was on the panel with me, and she put it well. She said, this is when you do a Kickstarter or crowdfunding campaign, it's a good proof of audience,
Hmm.
that
Right.
there are other people interested in this project. And so, so then later for other investors or other backers or cast and crew, they can go, oh wow, there's already like 200 people who are backing this project one way or another, and it may be for $1 or maybe for $100. But the point is, there is a body of people out there, a community of supporters and backers, and that's why you call them backers, not investors, because they got your
Right.
back.
Right. Yeah.
And so that's a big part of, I think, why people do it, and I think that was a good way to kind of clarify that, even in my own.
Sure. Yeah, yeah. And so what you have at this point is in the game is a screenplay.
Yeah, so we've got a terrific screenplay. I've collaborated with my friend Matthias Jeske. He and I kind of came up with the story and the treatment for the idea. Then we passed it on to our friend Christine Vartugian, who's a New York-based screenwriter. She worked on the script, passed it back to me. We've all been working on it. So it's been a great sort of team working on the screenplay for about 2.5 or almost 3 years,
Wow. Hmm.
since we had those first kind of nuggets of the idea.
Hmm.
And I'm from Omaha originally, as you may remember, Nebraska. And this whole story is kind of based on, I mean, it's fictional, it's a fictional story, but
Right.
it's based on a real airplane that the Air Force had, it was called Operation Looking Glass, that from 1961 to 1990, around that, for 30 years, basically 24/7, there was always one of these planes flying around the Midwest, 24/7. That was the backup command and control for the entire U.S. nuclear arsenal, missiles, subs, bombers. And it was these modified 707s called EC-135s. So it's a very specific kind of plane, and they actually had 10 of them in rotation.
Hmm.
Um, and this was the ultimate deterrence to the Soviets. The theory being, well, they could always do a sneak attack on Washington and kill the president. They could always do a sneak attack then on the secondary command and
Hmm.
control, which was the bunker at the Air Force Base, the underground bunker at the Air Force Base in
Hmm.
in Omaha. But this plane though was flying around and could never be bombed. And it was in the middle of the Midwest, so it was kind of protected in terms of airspace from fighters or anything like that. So the theory from the Air Force is that this kept us safe for a good 30 years or
Hmm.
so.
Hmm.
And they, the Air Force still has some version of this flying to this day. It may not be quite 24/7, but there is still a version of this. And there's an Air Force museum in near Omaha that has refurbished one of these planes. So Matthias and I went there, and really the folks at the museum and the veterans who served on the plane were very welcoming to us and showed it. We could take as much pictures, video, stills as we wanted, and then really talk to some of the folks that flew on this mission, and got some fascinating stories. And as love or hate the Cold War, it was a big part of
Yeah.
why we're here today, I suppose, or why we're
Yeah.
almost not here today, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah, exactly. So in your last film, 18 and a half, it was the 70s.
Yes. I mean, this mission flew from 1961 to 1990, but we chose this very specific month,
Hmm.
and actually a specific day. I think it's June 18th, 1973, for a historical reason, because we were trying to figure out, like, when in history was the president ever separated from the guy with the nuclear football? There's always a military attaché next to him with this, bag that's called the nuclear football. And one of the few times in history, and it wound up being great creatively, was in June of 1973. Nixon was hosting Leonid Brezhnev, the Soviet premier, at Camp David, which is
Hmm.
in Western Maryland. And as part of this was kind of an era of détente. They were trying to come up with all these treaties to limit nuclear proliferation, certainly among the two superpowers. And as a peace offering, Nixon gives Brezhnev a Lincoln Continental. He got the Lincoln Motor Company, give him a Lincoln Continental, because it turned out Brezhnev loved cars, big gearhead.
Yeah.
Anyways, Brezhnev gets in the car, goes, "Oh my God, this is amazing." Nixon gives him the keys, and he says, "Oh, Nixon, sit, sit, sit." Nixon sits in the passenger seat, and Brezhnev takes off down these
I
mountain roads
vaguely
on the air.
remember this. Yeah.
Yeah, on Camp David. Yeah, no, it's a historical thing.
Yeah.
I didn't know about it. My friend Matthias knew the story. And it's a little vague in the historical record, but for like at least 10 minutes, maybe 20 minutes, maybe longer, nobody knew where Nixon and Brezhnev were. And
Mm.
so Nixon's aide with the nuclear football, he's sitting there, he's out of the loop. And meanwhile, Brezhnev's people were like, well, hang on a second. Did Nixon just kidnap Brezhnev? The Americans were like, did Brezhnev just kidnap Nixon? So, tensions during those few minutes are really going to, at least fictionally, escalate. And I'm
Hmm.
sure in real life, they were all just panicking and
Hmm.
freaking out. Like, where did these two guys go? And even Nixon in his own memoirs wrote that he was terrified because Brezhnev was such a
Oh,
bad
poor
driver.
guy. Right. Yeah.
And he thought they were both going to go over the side of a cliff, or
Yeah.
hit some army jeep,
Jeez.
coming up the
Yeah.
other way. So anyway, but for our purposes, that perfect time to set our fictional world of five Air Force wives who wind up on one of these planes
Right.
and now have to decide the fate of the world with limited communications, and with, spoiler alert, one of them might be a spy, Adam. Which
Much
interesting.
intrigue. Much intrigue
Yeah,
ensues.
Exactly, exactly.
Atomic Fondue. And is
Atomic.
there going to be fondue? I think
Oh,
most people
there
do.
will be
There
fondue.
will be
Yeah.
fondue. Okay.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
it's a major plot point actually. So,
I believe
and
you.
it took us about two years to come up with that title, which it seems
It's
obvious
beautiful.
now.
Yeah. I love it.
Um,
Love the title.
yeah,
You know,
Atomic Fondue. And we have a great
I will take my
logo
lactate
that I
pills before
designed. What's that?
I'll take my lactate films before I go and step into the
Oh,
theater
I
when
know. Yeah, no, I got to take
wherever.
lactates before making this movie, for sure. But it's cheesy good fun.
Yeah.
Um, but it's a thriller, it's a comedy, fate of the world. So I'm just telling people, let's make a movie, save the world, and do what we can because quite honestly, the fear of nuclear annihilation has never been higher, Adam, because you never know who's got their finger on the button these days,
You know,
and some people want
which
to,
lunatic. And also that
yeah.
there has been another case of the US president and the Russian president disappearing for more than 10 minutes again without anybody knowing what was said or what took
Oh,
place.
yes,
You
recently,
remember more
yes,
recently.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, of
So
course, and that was,
that could be an interesting kind of epilogue. I'm just
yeah.
saying, I know you took you years to write the script, and this probably is not a part of it, but it could be an interesting little clip that you tag on after the credits finish rolling, you know?
Yeah, at that Anchorage summit, the guy with the nuclear football was not in the car with them.
Right,
So
right,
same thing, you know.
right.
Um, but yeah, it's no, I mean, I think the interesting thing, and you're familiar with my last film, 18 and a half, which was about Watergate, is what we found with that film is doing a period film, even if it's a comedy or,
Yeah.
lighthearted fiction, it will always resonate with an audience in the future. Um,
Hmm.
in different ways that are sometimes unpredictable. We were doing a movie about Watergate, and everyone saw it during Trump's second impeachment. And they're like, "Aha, this is about Trump." But when we showed it in Brazil, everyone was like, "Aha, this is about Bolsonaro."
Hmm. Right,
And in the same way, doing a period film, about Nixon and Brezhnev in the 1970s, it's always going to be relevant because nuclear weapons are going to be with us until all of a sudden one day none of
right.
us are relevant. So
You know,
it's going to stay relevant and will hopefully resonate with audiences. Because as you know, when you make these independent films, it may be 2 years until people see the movie, to see the finished movie. And it may be 3 years or 4 years or 5 years, just because of the way distribution and festivals and the timing of a film. So you can't
sure,
really predict when the audience is going to see it, which is why it's very hard to make a contemporary, political, fiction feature, because by the time people see it, it's no longer contemporary. You're
sure.
done.
Yeah,
So you may
I
as well
get it.
start with making a period film. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great point, and it will. Oh, I mean, you can make certainly uh distinctions or points in your film which will resonate. Unless I'm mistaken, both films kind of use these few minutes. You know, in the case of the tapes with Nixon, or
Yeah.
the missing tape, those minutes, and then in this case, we're looking at missing president. Those
Yeah,
little.
I hadn't really thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
We're taking a real life, literally a snippet in time,
Right.
and
Where
and
something is
and
missing, or a
something is
person in this
missing.
case. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're trying to explain it. And I think that goes to kind of how I see, the genre of historical fiction that I'm
Hmm.
doing, which
Hmm.
is, like if you look at, for example, how Tarantino has done his films, by the end of the movie, Manson's killed a completely different person. Hitler's dead. He completely rewrites the track of history. And
Hmm.
so you have a completely different ending. And that is one way to do historical fiction. I think what I prefer for myself anyway is to do the kind of historical fiction where you have your path of history and something fictional happens. These fictional characters interact with real history. And then by the end of the movie, you've kind of reset to our historical timeline that we know. And
Right.
then the audience is thinking, maybe that did happen. It's so I call it plausible speculative historical fiction. You know, it could have
It's a
happened. I mean,
mouthful.
goofy, but it could have
Yeah,
happened.
right. Or if
So
not, what do you think happened? So
yeah, exactly. And
you know,
it begs the question then, you know,
yeah,
and we had a lot of discussions after 18 and a half about, well, okay, well, what was on the 18 and a half minute tape? Because
right.
nobody knows and probably no one ever will know.
Yeah.
And that made for some really fun discussions and made people go, you know, do the research and themselves and figure, you know, come up with their own conclusions. And you know, so I think that's why I say like it's kind of fun to then leave that with the audience and make them wonder, you know, well, did this happen? Could this have happened? If this didn't happen, then what did happen? You know, how many times were we close to, you know, World War III and didn't know it? And you know, as historians have found out, there were a few times where we were
Yes. Yeah.
dangerously close.
Um, Atomic Fondue. Yeah.
Atomic Fondue go to Kickstarter.
There you go.
Yeah,
Fond Fond don't miss an opportunity to help
exactly.
this project.
That's what we're saying,
It's
Adam.
yeah.
Exactly.
All right, man. Thank you very much, and we'll meet same bat time, same bat channel.
I hope so.
Next phase. I hope.
Absolutely. All right. Thanks, Adam. Thanks for having me on, and
All right.
all my
Enjoy the
best.
good food in the valley there,
Yes, I will.
and I
Well,
look
hopefully,
forward.
I'll find some investors here. That's
Oh,
but that's the
okay. Right.
secret reason for coming to Napa Valley.
Very good. All righty. Well, good luck to you.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. You bet. Have a good night.